Finally, and the sort of biggest item tonight in terms of sort of weight going forward is the strategic plan that we have been working on and talking about for some time here, in combination with our Unified Improvement Plan, which I'm sure we'll get an explanation of what that is and why it's important. And then at the end of this presentation, we will be having a motion to presumably approve the Unified Improvement Plan, which is a necessary step in our relations with state officials, education officials. So with that, Brian, if you'd like to kick this off, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you. I think, I just want to take a second to pause. And as we get into this presentation, I think it's really important that we try to humanize this work. And it's mission critical that in the role that I play in the system, that I don't begin to talk about where we're going in a way that's tone deaf to the community and the people who have just engaged in the process of governance in our system. We are asking people to do a lot. Our conditions are not yet equal or equitable across the system, which I think is really important as a result of that we have to figure out a way to create focus, to accept the fact that not everything is mission critical, that we need to think about what is absolutely essential for us to focus on, to train on, to develop people on, so we can begin to disrupt the data that suggests that not all people, both students and our employees, are experiencing this system the same. And as I shared with you earlier in the evening, this particular plan, our strategic plan, which I'm incredibly enthusiastic about, is really focused on our core business, learning and teaching. And I'm really, really proud of that. We need to figure out how to continue to find strategic ways in partnership with our stakeholders to identify what's most important, pay attention to it, invest in it, and then continue to see how that provides, different outcomes across the system over time. And so as you think about the strategic plan, what I'm committed to with this team and with this district is to ensure that tonight shouldn't feel like there's any surprises. We have been talking about this work for almost a year and have really responded to stakeholder involvement to narrow down our focus even more than what we thought was a narrowed down version of this, to really, critically identify what are the areas which are literacy, mental health and belonging, and ensure that all of our students have the opportunity to graduate with options. I think those are areas that we can unify across the system on. They are areas that our data suggests that we need to continue to pay more attention to. And I think that there's also cross-cutting factors that if we invest in these particular areas, there will be a trickle effect in other areas. If more students belong, the likelihood that their academic achievement outcomes increase is really, really highly likely. If we continue to improve upon our already incredibly high literacy rates and continue to push past proficiency as being the goal and ensure that all students can read and function and think critically at advanced levels, we have opportunities to continue to do amazing things in this system. But what's not lost on me is this system is already really strong. And so I want to honor all of the work that has happened across our systems and not just think about the hard truths of how do we go from strong to exceptional. And that takes courage, it takes vulnerability, and it takes all of us to think about how we do this together. And I'm just really, really proud of that. I'd love to start our presentation this evening by showing a video that helps kind of tell this story in terms of where we are and where we're going.
Poudre School District exists for our students. We're all about helping kids and young people achieve at their highest levels and pursue their dreams. And it takes our entire community through a focused effort to make sure that happens. The PSD Strategic Plan is that focused effort. It's the roadmap that will improve outcomes for all students. Our priorities are literacy, which goes far beyond learning to read. Reading to learn unlocks students' potential in all aspects of their education and lives. Mental health and belonging is about promoting emotional well-being and healthy connections with peers, adults, and others in their lives. Graduate with options. This means that when seniors cross the stage at graduation, they do so knowing that they have choices. This plan won't just sit on a shelf. This plan is a living, breathing representation of how we show up for kids. It's our promise to students and our commitment to public education.
Excuse me. I think what Matt shared is, and he's the voice, for those of you that may not know, from our communications team that shared that storyline. I do think what he shared about this being our promise, our brand promise, is significant. You know, when we hear PSD in the community, acknowledging what that stands for is really, really important. And this is an educational experience for all system stakeholders to engage our community thoughtfully around how we're doing this, not just what we're focused on, but how we're actually approaching it to make systems level change. What I also appreciate about this system is it continues to double down on its values to ensure that all people experience success and not some. And I really believe that as we think about this school system and building upon our strength that already exists, is that this is an investment in our people. As you think about aligning our work and moving from a system of schools to a school system, that is complex, adaptive work. And it is our greatest hope to try to figure out how to cultivate a win-win scenario that we are not adding more to a plate, but we're actually clearing a plate and saying these are the most important things that we're paying attention to. I also think that's significant, and if you pay attention to the third bullet there, is that we have to outline our theory of action to identify how we actually are supporting and developing and cultivating our talent to be able to execute on where we are focusing our energy. And I think what makes this significant when you look at other strategic plans, and there's a difference around our strategic plan compared to a lot of others, is that our DE 1.0 monitoring report, which is one of the most robust monitoring reports of any system in America, I will tell you, it tells us everything that we want to know about our students. What's missing from it is it doesn't necessarily tell us yet around how we're growing as adults, myself included. And so really trying to figure out that if we believe that our adult practices continue to take a stance of learning and we continue to be better, not just as educators, but as leaders, as central office support systems, if we continue to believe in a few things that we can measure and do well, then ultimately we should see an improvement in student outcomes. But we cannot continue on the backs of students to measure them more, to get more data on them, when we recognize it's us that is influencing with their families, with our community, we are influencing the experiences that they have. And so this plan in itself is a district-wide commitment, not just to improvement, but to accountability. And I think that's a nuance that needs to continue to be iterated across our communities. Like, we will be measuring this along the way, both around how we are improving as adults, but also how it's impacting or not impacting students positively. And I think that's something that's really, really important, because I think all of us want to be accountable to doing great work. That's why we get into this business. But thinking about what that actually looks like in public education, we have room to grow in those particular areas. And I'm really excited that the team has put together a thoughtful approach to being able to do that. Next slide, please. No surprises here. As you can see, this plan will continue to ensure that we're focused on our three system priorities of literacy, mental health and belonging, and graduate with options. We want to make sure that we're ensuring that all of our students, not some of our students, are continuing to benefit from that focus on those particular priorities. You will also see tonight that you will be voting on our district UIP later on this evening. The strategic plan sets the course. The district UIP begins to talk about what does that look like in the year ahead, in a very specific way. One has to cascade to the other, and the schools, as they're developing their school-specific plans, that cascades from the district UIP. So just in terms of how we structure this, not just on paper, but in action in terms of when assistant superintendents visit and support schools, when I support schools and go out and just become curious around what we're seeing, what we're not seeing, what's working, what's not, these are the focal points of what we're engaging in dialogue and conversations around specific school communities. I think it's also important to note, not just for our internal stakeholders, but external stakeholders, is that while we are focused on these things, you heard through the broad range of different things that came up through community comment tonight, there's other aspects of this system's work that continues to be a priority. And I struggle to say that because I don't want to be a hypocritical leader. a lot of things are important. Ensuring that safety and security continues to be something that is a focal point of this system each and every day will continue to be a constant. It's not going to be dictated by a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. 6 years from now, we're going to still need to focus on safety and security. We also, as you heard me allude to earlier, there's operational sides of the house that we need to continue to focus on. And Director Brokish, you were so spot on in realizing that there are trade-offs around our investments and our energy and our financial resources around how do we invest in our organizational infrastructure, but also double down on our core business. I think in partnership with the various associations, this district modeled that in our last year of negotiations around having a collective effort in prioritizing our budget as an investment in people, but also our system priorities. The goal is to continue to sustain that high level of collaboration in the years ahead. And the other piece that I will share too is that diversity, equity, and inclusion can't be an initiative. It can't be a shiny object that this district chases in a vacuum. It needs to be something that we're thinking about our mindsets and our values and beliefs and realize that that is adaptive work that doesn't live in isolation and is mission critical to actually achieving and disrupting the outcomes that the system currently has. And so as we transition to our next slide, that work is going to be really important, and you're going to see some language that, and the community will see some and hear some language tonight from staff that may be new. It may seem like edu-speak. So I just want to take a quick second to just level set for everybody that's paying attention to what we're launching here tonight, is that we have priority performance challenges that I actually, with our team, embrace as opportunities. Our data has signals in it that tells us that we need to be paying attention to a lot of things, but some more than others. And that's how our priorities were cultivated and created. And it's why the investments that this board had made in adopting a new curriculum and adding more mental health supports and thinking robustly about how we continue to have students not just pursue 4-year degrees, but how do we help offset the students who want to go directly into the workforce or military or 2-year programs. That's going to, in order to accomplish that, we need to think differently. Because that is not the system that we live and work in today. The theory of action that you've heard me allude to earlier is really a simple if-then statement. If we do this, then we should expect this as the result. But I want us all paying attention to that if part of the sentence, because the if part needs to be explicit around what we're expecting staff with partnership of our nonprofit sector, with our families to be able to do and to learn in order to grow as a community, so ultimately students can grow with us. And then we have key strategies that are important to continue to ensure that we're leveraging that, not just investing in it, but giving people time. These particular priorities are not going to be fully actualized in terms of improvement in 1 year. We should see this as a multi-year effort towards improvement where we show each other as humans grace, compassion in terms of our experiences with learning, sometimes unlearning, sunsetting practices and things that no longer serve our students well, and taking a stance of not just looking about what we can do professionally, but DEI work also forces us to look within our hearts and within our minds and our lived experiences to see what biases that we have that we potentially need to address in order to show up differently in our work to serve all people well. So I'm excited about that work. We're going to pivot here in a second to learning more about our DEI strategy and how we're structuring ourselves as a school system in order to accomplish that. But I think it's important that we continue to stay data informed in this work. And I want to continue to double down on our principles of community, of taking a stance of learning, focusing on diversity, also thinking about inclusion, respect, courage, and action. All of these things can't be words on a piece of paper or on a website. They have to be actualized in what you see in terms of how we're approaching people in our learning strategies and how we're thinking about our core business differently to support our students. We have a lot of incredible staff members that are both here at the table, also here in partnership with us, not just to be visible in the work, but we'll have some opportunities to engage with you this evening. But I think I'm turning it over to Eric, our Chief HR Officer, to talk a little bit more about how we're structuring ourselves to be more focused in our DEI efforts moving forward. So Eric, welcome.
Okay, so got a lot of buttons to move. So hopefully this is, you can hear me there. So as Brian pointed out, we are not highlighting the DEI component as a specific shiny object. It's not just one project or one thing that we will be doing. DEI is really something that needs to be included in every bit of work that we do and everything that we set as a goal. So the DEI committee has developed a new framework for how it is doing its work, and in doing that, it is also working towards developing a work plan and a work map for the 2023-24 school year. Once that work map is completed, it'll be brought back and shared with the board and with our systems. And included in that work map will be a whole variety of different projects that we believe we have capacity to achieve in the school year. Among those would include things like completing training for both board and for the cabinet in this DEI lens and how we approach our work. It would include an update to our anti-bullying policy, and integrating our principles of community into how we do our work, how we treat each other, how we approach classrooms, parent-teacher conferences, and how to integrate that principles of community into our everyday work.
Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure to
Dwayne.
be here tonight.
Just as members of the team continue to take on different roles in the presentation, for the community, if you can introduce yourself and your title along the way, that would be wonderful, okay? Thank you.
Absolutely. Dwayne Schmitz, Chief Institutional Effectiveness Officer. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. So, as we engage in this work, data-informed action steps. We've got the UIP and the strategic plan, and in the past, we've talked with the board about how the monitoring report, which was mentioned earlier, DE 1.0, is supposed to dance with the UIP. Because really, the UIP is the adult actions, the steps, the plans on how we're moving to the next levels, and the monitoring report is looking back and talking about how have we done and how are those outcomes that are really student outcomes. I want to mention as we head into this process that we use a body of evidence from multiple years in a row and multiple different sources of data, which includes everything from achievement data, growth data, but it also includes connections data, Healthy Kids Colorado data, discipline data, all manner of data that we look at to kind of set the stage for what our priority performance challenges are. And then we address those priority performance challenges through both the strategic plan and the UIP, which are very, very aligned. It's critical that those two documents are aligned tightly, and I'm sure that the board, as they've read through both of them carefully, probably multiple times, can see that alignment. We've run processes with staff, and staff walk away from those processes seeing that alignment, and they appreciate that alignment. I want to mention that we have accelerated the timing of the UIP. If the board thinks back, it was September 27 last year that we were sitting here doing the same thing of looking at the UIP. So we're about a month in front of that. That's by design. We're benefiting from the work on the strategic plan and the alignment between the two to kind of accelerate our timeline on the district UIP. The importance of that Unified Improvement Plan or UIP being accelerated is it buys our schools about 7 to 8 weeks to have the UIP in hand that hopefully the board approves tonight, so they can align their school Unified Improvement Plans with the district Unified Improvement Plan. I want to say a thank you to the District Accountability Committee, and Becky is sitting right behind me here and spoke earlier, and she's a member of the District Accountability Committee, and I want to say thank you. They worked hard and fast to get this done a month early, and they understood the importance of that work so that we could better support the schools in aligning their efforts with the district's efforts. I also want to mention that the school's plans are due to the state on October 16th, so that's where the 8 weeks is coming from. And there's another component to this. The 3 assistant SUPs have done a great job of putting together a document. They've done this in past years, the assistant SUPs, but this year is kind of leveled up basically. It's a document that's very aligned with the UIP and the strategic plan, and it's utilized in a couple different ways with the school leaders. And I won't say more because I don't want to steal their thunder for the meeting this Thursday, right? But the point is, we're able to align and organize our system towards these several very specific efforts when we advance the timing like this a little bit. One of the important data sets that we get from the state, and by law, we have to respond to the data that we get in this district performance framework, is what it's called, a DPF. Schools get a similar document, a school performance framework, as you're aware. And if we have certain low marks on our district performance framework, by law, we have to address those. Now, Poudre School District has a long history of being accredited, and we don't get low marks on our district performance framework that requires that we address them specifically. So we have the freedom from the state's eyes to just address the priority performance challenges that we've identified, which is great. I really quickly want to mention that there's a lot of change going on in this accountability world. We're about 2 years into now a fairly full-blown assessment system in the state. This is the DPFs and the SPFs we're going to get later this week, we believe, if not early next week. We haven't received them yet. Are no longer called transitional. So we're back online where we've got growth data from grades 4 through 11, which is the first in several years. We'll go into a little more detail in just a moment. But we're back on. These are important data points for us, but I want to point out and remind us they're not the only data points. We use the monitoring report, we use our MAP data, our Acadians data, we look at multiple year trends, and yet this is important information. As the board looks at the list of the indicators, the key performance indicators, they'll all look familiar for these 2023 performance frameworks, which are no longer transitional. Over the last 5 years, as you see a line graph in the upper right-hand corner, there's 5 years of data there that indicates that the Poudre School District Performance Framework is traveling very, very consistently at about 66-67%. In the most recent year, which was last year, 2022, that we got a performance framework, I want to remind you it was called a transitional performance framework. And the reason the state did that is to signal to us that the data was thin and not as robust as it is in typical years. It's kind of like a cautionary note, right? Furthermore, I want to point out that the one dip that we see in that most recent year of 2022, that 2022 SPF, or DPF, is actually reflecting 21-22 achievement and growth data. And it's actually including, for the post-secondary workforce readiness measures, the class of 2021. And that's where the dip came from, which is only 2.2 percentage points, but it's coming from that PWR, post-secondary workforce readiness section of the framework. We were accredited, and that dip will pop right back up as we come out of that transitional framework and we get the more recent data. Graduation rates are in there and other things. And as you know, we had the highest graduation rates we've had in many, many, many years last year. That data is not included in that picture, but it will be on the next one. Couple important changes. We just wanted to take the opportunity tonight because we know that the board is going to see school performance frameworks as well as the district performance framework when they arrive. And there's some changes that we're back on. They're not transitional. And there's 6 changes I want to just highlight real quick. For several years, there had been an aspect to this where you could get a decrease of one plan type if you fell below 95% participation rates. They had done away with that during these transition years, and on these years, they had a couple of years where they paused the accountability frameworks and just held over ratings. At any rate, when we get these 2023 frameworks, that rule is back on. So you can drop a plan type if you have less than 95% attendance. It is what they call the accountability attendance rate, which does not include in the numerator or the denominator parent refusals, right, where they took their kids out of testing. The second thing, and that's interesting, all the numbers went from 1 down to 2. Sometimes Google does weird things. So that's really 1 through 6 in my world, okay? The second one is that they're no longer put the participation descriptor on these SPFs and DPFs. Growth, as I mentioned, is available for the first time, grades 4 through 11, because that skip grade piece we done on the assessment system, we're past that. They are going back to finally, they have single-year and multi-year performance frameworks. If you remember, they used to do a 3-year framework and a 1-year framework, and they gave you the better of the two. They had to move away from that through these COVID disruption years. Well, they're back on, but the multi-year is a 2-year. They are changing one of the key categories for that we're reporting student outcomes in to multilingual learners rather than English language learners. And when you see that on the frameworks, multi-language learners will include all of those categories of like limited English proficient, fluent English proficient, and so on, not English proficient, all the way up to exit year 1 and exit year 2. So it's all of those different categories. And there's going to be a new piece of information called Exceed It, the 6-year clock, specifically for multilingual learners. It'll be a new measure that we will see, and it will be on the part that they're also bringing back for informational purposes called on track. And I don't know if you all remember that on track growth as opposed to median growth percentiles. Those are back coming on. There are more changes, but I'm not going through the list. I've spent too much time probably on it already. The point is that changes are here. We're getting back to the full-blown accountability system. And the point of this next slide is it takes a look through the next couple of years past 2023. We're going to see yet more changes are coming our direction. What I want to mention as the Chief Institutional Effectiveness Officer and somebody who's been paying attention to this accountability metrics as well as all our local metrics and then the whole improvement process that we use in PSD, all of this stuff rolled up really just means that we are going to continue to see changes in the accountability landscape, but Poudre School District's deep analysis that we do every year, where we land on these 3 priority performance challenges we're going to talk about for the rest of the evening in this presentation, will be reflected in across all these different changes in the state accountability system. It's not going to throw us in a different direction from what we have planned in our UIP and our strategic plan. And that's probably the bottom line message I want to share with you. And I'm going to pass over the mic to Tracy to take us into literacy.
Thank you, Dr. Schmitz. Dr. Tracy Geil, Assistant Superintendent of Schools. It is my pleasure to be the cabinet sponsor and honored to speak to the work of the literacy team. They've been working throughout last school year to identify the different strategies that would help close the gap in performance that Dr. Schmitz talked about from our monitoring report between our current state and our desired state. And so we have some key strategies that we want to walk through tonight. So in just a brief highlight and overview of the district monitoring report in terms of what we were seeing for our current state going to desired state. So this slide shows 2 data points, one of which is Acadience reading, which our students in kindergarten through 3rd grade have been taking for several years. And the other data point is our MAP reading, which is NWEA, which is a nationally normed assessment that students in grades 2nd through 8th grade have been taking. So the first data that is in the upper left corner is Acadience reading, and that spring achievement effect size. So you'll see on the x-axis we have the years dating back to 2016-17, and then on the far right of that graph is 22-23 data point, and then on that y-axis is the spring achievement effect size. So in short, that effect size is a metric that we use to be able to compare different assessments and be able to take that information and interpret them across different tests to see what the story is that we're seeing in our trend data. So this particular Acadience reading, that spring achievement effect size, is showing that we have a 3-year decline, a trend. So we always look for that 3-year trend that started pre-pandemic and then certainly had a significant drop in that 2020-21 year. That Acadience reading is measuring early literacy skills, those foundational skills that are critical to future reading and comprehension. And so that led us to examine that this could potentially be a really important priority performance challenge for us to investigate and to explore some really key high leverage strategies to address. So Acadience reading is shown in that upper left, and then going across to the right, that percent of at and above grade level expectations, the spring end of year. So you see a percentage of 79.2% that 2016-17 year, and then 22-23. We've had 3 years trending upwards since 2020 and 21, with last year being 72.2%. Comparing to our PSD target and national norms, the story is still showing that PSD students are performing above national norms, but we do have a higher benchmark that we've set as our PSD target of a 0.25 effect size, and also an 85% at grade level and above. Our target, while it's at grade level proficiency that we have as the title of that particular data slide, our real and true outcome with literacy is we want students to be able to access high levels of text and complex text, and text that they can have rich discussions about, and text that open their worldview. So while this is a measure that's really important to see if students are on grade level and on track for that level of proficiency, the other really important outcome is their ability to engage with high levels of text. And so you'll see as we get into the strategies that one of those really important strategies is the text at the center, and being able to work with a text that challenges their thinking and challenges their assumptions, and that they can read and respond to. So also on this slide in the lower left corner is the map reading. It tells a very similar story about why we chose literacy as a key performance priority challenge. You'll see that declining trend line with a little bit of an increase in the last year on our map reading. Both of these confirm for us in our monitoring report that this is an area that we need to pay attention to and why it's being prioritized in both our strategic plan and in our UIP. So in literacy, the UIP priority performance challenges. So as I talked about, the metrics are in the monitoring report, so we are looking at both that early literacy foundational skills as a gap that we're addressing. We're also looking at the NWEA, but also the big part of that first bullet of reading proficiency levels is, again, engaging with complex texts and having the ability to do so at a high level. The second bullet being that our gains are evident post-pandemic across all of our grade levels, yet pre-pandemic literacy levels have not been fully realized. So we want to regain some of that ground we had pre-pandemic. And then the third bullet talks about we really do have persistent gaps amongst student populations, so our historically marginalized student groups meet grade level proficiency expectations at lower rates than other groups in PSD, both pre-pandemic and currently. And our strategies really are working to address that. So our theory of action, what we are working toward through the literacy plan, is that if all students consistently implement high-quality materials, systems, and pedagogy, then every student will have the foundational and critical literacy skills needed for success. And then that strategic plan, major improvement strategy for year one, is we're really focusing and provisioning that high-quality standards-based materials that are representative of multiple cultures and identities. So the Literacy Year One projects, I'm the proud sponsor of the team along with Dr. Julie Chaplin. We have several team leads who are championing the work in different areas, and some of them are represented here tonight, and appreciate all of their work getting us to this point. There are 4 key projects that we will elevate and execute on during this school year. The first one being adopting 9th and 10th grade English language arts materials, with that recommendation coming to the Board of Education on or around January 24th is the date we're looking at. The second bullet being that we want to have really strong curriculum implementation of 3 programs across our pre-K through 5 system with creative curriculum, Amplify CKLA for our core knowledge schools, and EL education at our K-5 schools. I also want to mention that our dual language schools will continue to have professional development tied to their Wonders and Maravillas, which is specific to our dual language programs. The third bullet being that we want to focus specifically on the materials that we want to de-implement that are not aligned to the evidence-based reading instruction. All of our staff have had a really robust training and professional development that has allowed us to see different materials and different approaches and what is truly based in evidence. And so we want to look at the materials that we have had in our literacy curriculum and remove the ones that are not really going to produce the results and close the gaps that we recognize that we need to. And then finally, based on feedback from the board and other stakeholders at our last meeting, we did add that fourth project to really address the task aspect within literacy. So not only do we want our students to engage with a really strong, complex text, we also want to give them an authentic task with writing at the center of it to engage in. And so that feedback that we received at the last meeting, we did add that particular project with a teaming protocol. So we're going to combine a teaming protocol to look at designing tasks that are really strong, starting with our middle school teams. And with that, I'm going to move this off to Liz Davis, who's going to talk about mental health and belonging.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? So Liz Davis, I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Senior Executive Director of Student Services, and grateful to be here today supporting mental health and belonging. So I always do this the wrong way. Okay. Yes. Oh, I have to push hard. Okay. So this slide demonstrates survey data from our youth last year, correct, Dwayne? Yes. And it is in table format with mental health concerns listed on the left and rows containing our N count, total percentage, female, male, and queer non-binary students on the top. Some of our students, some of our groups of students, in particular, are students identifying as LGBTQIA+, self-report elevated mental health risk factors such as self-harm, suicidality, and signs of depression, especially in females and queer non-binary students. We're concerned about this data. We're really concerned about our high numbers and grateful that we have a strategy for mental health and in the UIP around mental health and belonging. So our UIP performance challenge, we really come to understand some of the challenge based on the global pandemic caused by stress in our homes and school environments. And our youth need a ton of support, and we've seen that in the years, and we've all seen that. Our students who are historically marginalized self-report not feeling as connected to their peers, staff, or interests and passions at school when compared to the overall PSD student population. And some of our groups, some of our groups of students identifying as LGBTQIA+, again, self-report that elevated mental health risk factor rates. Our strategic plan, our theory of action states if we increase access to mental health supports for staff and students, then we will create a learning environment that fosters inclusivity, connectedness, and well-being, which will increase student engagement and improve academic outcomes. And then we see our strategic plan, major improvement strategy for year one. It's really about increasing student access to mental health providers and opportunities for those meaningful connections. But when we think about that, we think about that not only internally in our district, but working in collaboration with very closely with our community partners, and we're excited about that to come. Oops. You got to push hard. Okay, I don't have that down. Thanks for bearing with me. So excited to engage in some of this work with sponsors, with Madeline Nodlet and Dr. Insu Nelson, so thanks so much, and amazing team leads. And we have a group of projects that I'll walk us through a little bit. And the first one, you know, when we think about our schools, we think about not adding lots of new stuff. Our schools are doing lots of amazing things. And one of the things that they're all doing is they're all having multi-tiered system of supports. All of our schools are having teams that meet, but we really wanted to see specialized focus on social, emotional, and behavior support aligned with our data, and really a focused area around that. We're excited about that project, and really working on some consistent guidance in that space connected to some processes and protocols. And you've all heard this about hiring and training and working with CSU and having interns to fellows. We're excited about that, and increasing our mental health staff and trainees to not only work on our processes and systems, but to really support some of the staffing to increase connectedness with our students. We're excited about that. And we have a cohort of 10 starting from CSU School of Social Work soon, next week. We will also refine and continue implementing a comprehensive community partnership strategy specific to mental health and belonging. We're working really hard on engaging our community partners, and excited to work together because we can't do this alone, and we know that. And we will continue refining and implementing a comprehensive community partnership strategy. I talked about that. The next one, promoting awareness of PSD and community mental health resources through the Multilingual Communications Project driven by student input. And that's the work of Madeline and her team. And the next one is a project around bullying prevention and education, and really having a team being intentional about looking at our policies and looking at our frameworks here in the district, here in the state, and trends nationally, and making sure that we're aligned with best practices and looking at our data. So we look forward to engaging in a project around that as well. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. I'm Dr. Julie Chaplin, Assistant Superintendent, and I'm really excited to talk about one of my passions, which is graduate with options. Coming from my entire career in secondary, I feel a real strong connection to this work. I'm excited to be a cabinet sponsor to support it along the way. So as we think about this strategic priority and how we determined to land here, this kind of goes back to some of the data that Dwayne really helped us really kind of elaborate in terms of how do we look compared to our districts that are similar in demographics and in size. And when we look at the table up here, the two tables on the left really indicate line graphs around SAT scores. So you can see Poudre School District is in black, and that indicates that amongst all of our districts, we are second from the top in how we score, which is our achievement. So we have really high achieving outcomes for our students on the SAT. When you then start looking at the FAR table on the right, again, Poudre School District is in black. We are at the bottom. Of course, we're above the state in terms of our graduation rates, but we are still lagging behind all of our comparable districts, which for us then calls into play this need for a strategic priority and how we shore up and how our graduation rate really becomes more representative of our student performance and what we see happening in our schools and we see as our students in terms of what they know and what they can demonstrate. So I'm very, as we think about the priority performance challenges, really in a nutshell, it really talks about, we're not commensurate, just as I had just stated, in terms of levels of college and career readiness. And we have historically marginalized student groups who have not been graduating at the same rate as our other groups throughout PSD. And they also don't have the same graduation rates as their like group peers throughout the state as well. So our strategic plan, our theory of action, we fully believe that if we expand options to meet those graduation requirements and we implement some equitable grading practices in our system, we focus on decreasing absenteeism among students, then we're going to help prepare them better for their future opportunities. And so in year one, our strategic plan really focuses on updating high school graduation requirements to support multiple pathways pathways. Multiple, I want to stress that, to ensure that students are supported and they're attaining all of the things that they need, not only to graduate, but to follow their intended pathways after they leave Poudre School District. And so I'm thrilled to be the cabinet sponsor along with Dr. Dwayne Schmitz and Dr. Insoon Olsen. We have amazing team leads. A few of them are in the house tonight. And we'll continue to add some more as we focus in on the middle school. So by around September 15th, we'll have a few more leads as we address truancy absenteeism work and middle school. But really, the three main bullet points of our projects are looking at those high school graduation requirements to support multiple pathways, including two-year college, four-year college, military, career, and then how we also adjust and allow for students to earn standard diplomas, even though they may have an individual education program or they might be a diverse learner. And so we've got some wording and policies that we can restructure to make all of that happen. The one piece that I really want to stress as we're looking at graduation requirements is that this, again, is how do we provide more pathways and more opportunities for students to take classes that they want to take, that aligns with their interests, their passions, exploration, and future ideas of what they want and who they want to be. This is not trying to manipulate credits in a way to boost rates. That is not the intent here. I fully do believe that when students are engaged and they're able to work and complete coursework in their passions, we're going to see that. That is not the goal. We need to really be articulate about different pathways that students can take. What does it look like to get an AA in our high schools? What's the pathway to the Ascent program? Because it's not very clear to all of our families. How do we begin to map a four-year college pathway, a two-year, a military enlistment, and then multiple pathways of all of the avenues that you can do for career? We have designated CTE pathways. And so how do we develop those, make those so that students and families can understand them and tap into work-based experiences, internships, apprenticeships, gaining industry certifications? There are so many nuances into graduating and being prepared. And right now, our current system really isn't allowing students to tap in where they need to. So you can tell I'm a little excited about that work. The second project, of course, is looking at middle schools. And we're starting at middle schools, but this will be all secondary. It's just going to take a while to develop not only the common understanding of equitable grading practices, first with our principal group, and what is our common understanding, and then what do we agree upon as standard equitable practices, and how do we build that? That's our focus this year, is fostering that leadership development with our middle school principals in the hopes that next year, not in the hopes, they will next year, then implement those same sorts of engagement processes with their staff. And next year, we would reiterate this process with high school, which would iterate the following years. And then the final very important work that has been in progress with Liz Davis and her team and James DiPilato and a number of other members in our district is looking at our truancy processes and how we implement system-wide strategies to address chronic absenteeism and truancy. They are not the same thing, and they do require different strategies. And so we've got a lot of committees and community engagement, parent partnership engagement to review truancy handbooks, come up with recommendations, and then even potential future ideas of how we develop even more hands-on supports for schools, families, and kids. So with that, I think this goes to Miss Madeline.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Chaplin. My name is Madeline Noblet. I am the Chief Information Officer here in PSD. And this evening, I'll talk with you about how it is that we will communicate the PSD strategic plan now that you have gotten to take a tour of it. We want to make sure that our community, our students, our staff, our parents and guardians, our community partners, all have opportunities, not just in the days to come, but in the weeks, months, and years, to be able to really understand the plan and be able to see themselves in it, because it's only then when we have awareness of it across our system that we can build alignment and ownership into that plan and be able to really see how it can affect students and what their experiences are in the classrooms every day. So as far as a launch for communications, we provided an update as this team at our administrators kickoff in July, being able to help bring everybody along with the work that has occurred, the simplification going deep on some of these, the few different focus areas that we have, as well as help provide understanding of where folks would be able to provide input and help inform the work moving forward. From there, we had the strategic plan launch video that was played earlier in the presentation, play as well at the August 10 and 11 district-wide professional learning days as a moment to be able to, again, build awareness and hopefully some excitement around launch of the plan. I will pull up here in just a moment a strategic plan subsite that we've had a number of folks working on. That will be the home for all information about the plan, not just today, but as we move forward. And then we'll package all of this up. The subsite link, which is PSD strategic plan, strategic plan.psdschools.org. We'll package that up along with the hype video and really our why it is that we are doing this plan, why now, and how do we all work together around it. That'll go out tomorrow to all staff and our community, so parents as well as key community partners and secondary students. And then our team has been working on building out a protocol to be able to partner with district leaders to, again, increase awareness of what our steps are moving forward with year one and how the work will move forward in our system, and again, where all of our colleagues, regardless of position, can hopefully see themselves and figure out where it is that they can bring our priorities to life. And then what we would propose is bringing updates to you all, to our board, twice annually. And that allows our teams time to do the deep work, make sure that we are building alignment, that we are taking the time we need to bring people along and to get feedback so that this work can happen with fidelity across our system, and then be able to, in a consistent way across all of these action teams, be able to share how it is that we're doing on the plan, what's working, what's not working, and be able to then, after presenting to you all, reflect that same information out to our community, primarily on the strategic plan subsite that we will tour briefly here in a moment, and then through various strategic communications plans to support each of the teams, recognizing that there will be important milestones and things that we need help from folks across the system to implement as we go. All right, so this is just an image on the screen here of a student with their arms raised above their heads. It's one of the students in elementary school here in Poudre School District. And it, when we click on it here, will take us to that strategic plan subsite. Subsite's just a fancy word for a separate website that everyone will be able to get to from psdschools.org. So starting tomorrow, we will have all sorts of easy ways for folks to get to this site. But what you see here along the top, Poudre School District Strategic Plan, and then there is a blue navigation bar just below with our district priority areas of literacy, mental health and belonging, and graduate with options. When users navigate to each of those, it will take them to a subpage that highlights the information that my colleagues have shared this evening around why is it that we're focused on each of these three performance indicators. What is it that we hope to accomplish as we move forward in this work? who is working on this, not the specific staff members' names per se, but giving our community a sense of the true collaboration that's happening across our system, represented in different departments and school-based leaders and community partners. And then over time, again, thinking through the twice annual updates, being able to reflect data that we collect and monitor so that our, again, collective community can see the progress that we are making across each of these areas. All right, so our next steps, as we have talked about before in the space, but want to bring us back, is right now in fall, we've walked through, of course, the year one project implementation. From here, we have action teams that will be identifying year two projects. So teams came together just recently to be able to work together, understand the charge ahead, be able to figure out how it is that they're going to be working best as teams to do this work, and then building out those year two project plans. And then as we come back in spring to be able to provide you all an update, we want to give progress reports on each of those year one projects, and then how it is that we're going to refine and move through the year two projects. And then at that point, we will be able to add information to the subsite around those year two projects and start the planning process for year three. And again, all of this, we imagine the cadence being that we'd come here, get feedback from you all as our directors, be able to integrate that with feedback from our teams and all of those various action team feedback loops, and then share the information out across that strategic plan subsite. All right, with that, we will go ahead and pause, and then any questions, discussion you'd like to have, we're happy to entertain that.
Looks like Nate has something.
Will there be fireworks?
Looks like Nate doesn't have anything. Sorry, go ahead.
Good question. I wish there were. I've not yet gotten approval from the fire department. I will add it to the plan.
DJ, you had something.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of getting to it on the website when you're showing it, but one of the things that I felt kind of missing a little bit in there, and you talk about, seeing yourself in the work. And so I kind of wonder if there's a way that we have an opportunity to share in our newsletters or in communications of like what you might see or how you will see the work. And I'm not smart enough to come up with great ideas on that necessarily, but it's just so that, one, we're talking about it regularly, and two, we'll understand that, like literacy, you're going to see new books on there. You're going to be seeing new books or a new way that we talk about this. I just wonder if there's a way that we could work something like that in there so that, again, we're talking about it twice a year or whatever, but we want everybody really talking about it all the time. And so that's just something that jumped out to me. And then I felt a little better when I saw the actual website versus what I was reading before. But I think there's an opportunity to share that.
Yeah, great question or idea, Director Anderson. As our team worked over the summer, not just on the subsite, and huge shout out to our friends in IT as well and helping us pull that all together. What we have built out in our communications strategic plan for the year are, I hope, what will address your idea. And that is not just being able to provide the community with those concrete updates around our progress on the plan, but really, as you said, where are we seeing it in our system? And so we have, I don't remember the number of stories that we identified that we want to tell as a team, but being able to go deeper, do more kind of feature work. And so some of the ones that we have on our list are around what does the elementary literacy adoption really look like for students? And we don't know yet exactly how the angle will play out, but being able to show, not just tell, tell what the experience of one of our elementary kiddos and our elementary educator friends, what that is actually looking like in practice and how it is different from past experiences with our literacy curriculum. So that's one example. Matt and Philip, our talented video team, are working on a series that they want to center upon each of our district priorities. And we recognize some of the episodes may in fact bring together all three of the priorities in one. So they did a series years ago around, it was called The Student Experience. And again, the idea was really to show, not tell, the beautiful, intentional experiences that our students have every day. And so they'll be working through a video series with between 4 and maybe 6 of those this year. We also have stories lined up to be able to more deeply feature and really show the people behind the fellowship program on the mental health side of things. So to be able to talk to several of the fellows and be able to understand who they are as humans and what motivated them on the journey that they are on to be able to serve our students, and then tied to that, what the experience is like for our students to be able to see them and interact with them in our system, and for our colleagues to have the additional support in the system. So our plan is to launch, this is really the starting place, and then to be able to, we have as a team said we have aligned our work entirely around the priorities so that in time we should be able to build out content on that subsite across our entire site that is in constant alignment with the work that is happening day by day by day. So I hope that helps address.
Other comments or questions? DJ apparently has another.
I have another. Yeah, on the literacy one, could you explain to us and the community why, when we're looking at 9th and 10th grade, what about 11th and 12th grade of English? Just address that part.
So I will do my best to address that particular question. So 9th and 10th grade are two of those core courses at high school, of course, where that the critical aspect of all kids are going into those two courses. It's probably our best opportunity to leverage an adoption of some very targeted materials that has a systemic impact across the district. Whereas once students start to go into those 11th and 12th grade, they tend to be very selective types of courses that a district-wide adoption wouldn't necessarily best serve as many students as much as it would be at that 9th and 10th grade level. And let Julie Chaplin add on as a more experienced secondary
Yeah, sure. I can definitely add on a little bit to that. That's you're right on with that. When we get to 11th and 12th grade, not only are there more course offerings in language arts, but we're also looking at concurrent enrollment. So we're not using district curriculum. We're aligning with those community college partners, and so the stratification of that really becomes quite intense, I guess. Mm-hmm. And 9th and 10th grade also hasn't had an adoption for, I don't even think that I've seen one. Yeah. So I'm 20 years and I've never seen one. So it's really, really, really needing to do that. But yeah, 9th and 10th are really the core of where you get students in, focusing, helping get the SAT level.
Go ahead.
You're struggling today with me. I don't know. I just want to share some of the things that I heard as you were all going around the room here. One of the things is I just love the way that this has been set up and divided. You can see the overlap in everything, but you also see that there's definite ownership. And that I just want to thank you all for the strong teams. Thank you all in the back there for being willing to be on these teams. It's other words I wrote down, excitement. I think maybe Julie, you won the excitement one. I don't know. I think that was while you were talking, I wrote that down. The other thing that just struck me was that this is the way to eat the elephant, right? One bite at a time. And that's what we're doing, is this year it's that one bite, and then next year it's going to be the next bite, and the year after that. Liz, as you were talking, I looked over here and I saw the 3 beautiful posters that we have. I also noticed them up at the Welcoming Center in the mall. They were on the back of the bathroom stall. So for those who can't see those posters, they're designed for students with a QR code that basically says, I think is it Ask, Listen, Connect? And it's there's a Spanish and English and a Arabic version of that with a QR code on it, so that they can connect with any mental health services that they may need. And they're attractive and fun and just beautiful. You all are taking something that is extremely complex, and you have made it easy to understand, digestible. And I think that's going to be super important for our community. They're going to need that in those bite-sized pieces, digestible pieces. Madeline, your discussion around, you're talking about storytelling around our priorities. And that is an amazing way to get out what we're doing here, that storytelling. And then just what we're doing is we're just getting the most out of those changes. So when you're talking about doing 9th and 10th grade, that you're hitting the majority of the students, or in a sense all of the students, instead of saying, well, we could piecemeal here and there. Let's focus on the students that we can get the biggest bang for the buck kind of thing. So I'm excited by this. This is really, it's just extremely well done, well put together. It's energized me, and thank you. Just thank you. I know the tremendous amount of work that went into this. I know that probably divvying these up into the pieces that and who is leading and who's on the team and all of that, I'm sure that took quite the effort, and looks fantastic. So thank you.
Jim?
Just building on what Kristen said, I love the ownership, I love the commitment, I love the focus. One of the things I love about this whole thing is when someone comes to me and says, Jim, how's it going on the school board? I'm actually able to come back and say, actually, we're focused on 3 priorities: literacy, mental health and belonging, and graduate with options, and then start talking about those. And it's just so fun to be able to do that. And when I'm done, usually people are like, wow, that, it's much more than what they expected. So I sure appreciate all the work behind that to make that work. Thank you.
Other comments? Oops, getting loud again. Looks like not, right? Okay. We really appreciate the presentation and the engagement with the board around the strategic plan and the underlying unified improvement plan, which we're going to talk about and vote on in a second. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.